Eureka! I've done it! I figured out how Southgate is going to win the Euros this summer. And it all boils down to using three at the back, a Southgate special. As Euro 2024 approaches this summer, England's hopes are soaring high. Higher than they probably ever have been before. Fueled by that dynamic duo of Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham. But how can England, and more importantly Gareth Southgate, harness their talents on the same pitch so they're both playing as well as they do at club level? Will it happen? Probably not, but let's dive into it. Southgate opting to use a 4-3-3 in his last international tournament. How do you kind of fit them both in, with Phil usually playing on the left but primarily being a better player in the attacking mid position, and Jude Bellingham, who has always been identified as a box-to-box player but now playing as that second striker / box crashing 8.5, if you want to call it that? How do you get them both in the team? Pep was quoted saying Phil Foden was the best player in the world this season, and I don't think many of us can dispute that. His talents have finally risen and the cream has come to the top, and he's man-managed the guy so well. He hasn't played him too much, he's young still, he's won 5 Premier Leagues, you know, he's a winner already, and that's what England are lacking in their team. And with the depth of the 10, players like himself have moved out to the wings nowadays, which he has done at club level, but he seems to perform better in that 10 role. Jude Bellingham, on the other hand, who was identified as a box-to-box midfielder in the past, has been employed by Real Madrid and Carlo Ancelotti as a number 10 himself, but he looks more like a box-crashing 8.5, as the football hipsters like to call it. So how do you get two number 10s in behind the striker, whilst there's two wingers in Saka and Rashford, which we know Southgate likes to play? Of course, the whole world pressured Southgate into not using the three in the back in the last tournament, to take the handbrake off, so to speak.
It's over!
And so he ended up using a 4-3-3, which did offer balance throughout the team, with Declan Rice in that sitting position and Henderson and Bellingham just in front of him. So a 4-3-3 just wouldn't work. You could use a 4-2-3-1, and if of course Kyle Walker is probably playing right back, then maybe Trent and Declan Rice in a double pivot, with Bellingham sat just behind Kane and Foden on the left. Now this is great and has all the players you want to see on the pitch, but to maximise the efficiency of these players, I would play with the three. Let me explain. With three at the back, we'd like to play in the WM formation to maximise efficiency from our two main men. What is the WM, I hear you ask though? The WM was first used in the 20th century, and the classic formation was made up of 4 lines of players, with a back line of 3 sitting behind 2 half-backs, which in the modern game would be like BMs or your inverted fullback, a pair of inside forwards, which would be Foden and Bellingham, supported by a front 3, making up that 3-2-2-3 formation. A modern example of this is of course Pep's 2023 Man City, where his fullback John Stones often inverted into the DM position formationally, when in attack to flood the midfield. Funnily enough, England possess John Stones, the modern centre-back whose defensive capabilities hold up, but so good on the ball that he can push forward and flood that midfield, which is the reason for the dual role. And this would totally be doable for England with John Stones or even Trent. We saw how effective the WM formation is with Tuchel's Chelsea in 2021, and even the year before when they won the Champions League, only conceding 4 goals. With this very system, they had fullbacks pushing very high up the pitch. But in our England WM, Saka, Foden, Kane, Bellingham and Trent would make up the W, while Shaw, Rice, Maguire, Stones and Walker would make up the M. Their excellence in ability and extreme athleticism, whilst having this confidence on the ball of about 7 or 8 of this England team, means that multiple can play in multiple roles, means that we could take advantage of this highly efficient formation of play. England are only looking like this in 2023 because of the failures of the 2010 World Cup. After the disaster of England's golden generation in South Africa, English football's development system needed a major upgrade. Fabio Carvalho's side had been beaten by a Germany team who had benefited from an academy system revamp 10 years prior, inspiration for which would become the EPPP in England was partly taken because of the German FA's changes. The Elite Player Performance Plan in England was a long-term ambition brought in to improve the quality and quantity of English players in the future. Started with a new training facility in St George's Park around the time, right the way through to revamping the whole academy system in the UK, which, cut a long story short, has produced technical generational talents in Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham 14 years later. But back to the point though, this Southgate WM system would rely less on wing-backs defensively and relies on Saka and Trent offensively. With Saka slightly out of position in left mid, I think he could hold down the job with him playing in left back before and showing that he does possess defensive capabilities when asked of for Arsenal, and Trent at right mid, which you feel like he was destined to play in anyway. The defensive work will come at the top of the M from Basmati Rice and General John Stones, controlling the midfield, ball carrying when they win it back, and either leg of the M being the fullbacks in Luke Shaw and Kyle Walker in the centre back position, which they've played for before in Southgate's system. It just makes sense. The system doesn't necessarily require a 3-5-2 formation. It could well use a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 with them just shifting round, but the 3-5-2 formation formation is the easiest for us to get our heads around, really. Like I say, this would primarily be employed in attack when England are in possession, which I feel like they're likely to do throughout the tournament, and then you could fall back into shape with a 4 at the back, with Trent or General John Stones getting back into that 4 when need be. That's the benefit of it. Now I hear shouts for Maino in the double pivot with Rice, but he's 18, and that would leave out tournament proven players who would fit that position anyway, in a tournament where these players have to hold their nerve, which is an already nervy affair when you put on an England shirt. He's one for the future for sure. And you might say that Southgate would never employ this kind of system, but with Southgate's 3 at the back, which he played literally 2 tournaments ago, this system was nearly in place. He just didn't have the roster of players that he does now. When you have Dele Alli and Jesse Lingard being replaced by Jude Bellingham and Phil Foden, you feel like the system should revolve around them. They really might benefit from the WM, playing to their strengths. If any other country had 2 players like this, they would be playing to their strengths. It's something England have notoriously not done in years gone by. When you had the problem with Scholes, Gerrard and Lampard playing on the pitch at the same time, it never worked out. Could I see this happening? I don't know. Southgate doesn't like to take the handbrake off, but it is his last tournament, so he really just needs to go for it at this stage. Of course, Jude Bellingham and Phil Foden are so young and represent the future of English football, but I don't think you'll get a better chance of taking advantage of an international tournament like you will in 2024. People often look down on Southgate because of his choices of players. Of course, Phillips and Henderson are always getting chosen, but should he do the right thing and put the right 11 on the pitch this summer, it might be England's best chance at ever winning the Euros.